once Peppa and her family were going to go to the mountains for a barbecue. So Peppa and George were very excited, and George loves going to mountains. And they were even going to bring the barbecue, and they were going to ride in their camper. So they got in, and then Peppa had gone in, George had gone in, and then Mommy Pig had gone in, and then Daddy Pig had put the barbecue in the back, and then he sat in, he closed his roof, and then they were ready to go to the mountains for vacation. So they were kind of going to go to the same spot they were before. So Peppa and George had finally got there in their camper. And of course, they sure do love mountains. And then the pig family had gotten out, and George had saw the same place where he had went on top of the part of the mountain. And then the camper van had kind of moved by itself and kind of had gotten over there. And it needs to be moved over here because Daddy Pig is going to put up the roof for the barbecue to cook. And then he lifted up the camper van roof, then took out the seats for Peppa, George, Mommy Pig, and Daddy Pig. And then Daddy Pig had set it up the chairs for Peppa Pig and her family to go and eat. And they were kind of going to have a picnic once year in this picnic spot. But they were going to cook with a barbecue. And Daddy Pig was going to set up the barbecue, and and they were going to have like vegetable pops and fish. So Daddy Pig had made the roof get out for it to be in shade and for him to cook it. Right? Then Mommy Pig had sat down in her spot, in the spot for picnic. And then Peppa and George love mountains. In fact, they should probably climb up a tall mountain. And George had remembered the rules of what he had done last time. Peppa had climbed up so good, she had made it to the top. And she done really good, really good. And then George had done it because he's the best mountain climber as well. And then they had made it all the way top of the mountain. And they love mountain climbing. And Peppa kind of wanted to jump up and down in muddy puddles, but there wasn't even a muddy puddle. So Peppa had looked on the mountain, and she was on a muddy puddle on top of the mountains. But George had fell down, and so he decided to climb back up. Then they jumped up and down in that muddy puddle, and George's shadow was kind of showing off a bit. And then when it was time for lunch, Mommy Pig had called, "Peppa, George, come sit down for lunch." Then Peppa had climbed down and George was too scared. So he is way too scared. And Peppa had already made it. And then he was kind of crying and crying. And he was like, then Daddy Pig was just about to sit down and he heard that strange noise. And George Pig was on the mountain all by himself. And Mommy Pig couldn't believe it. Peppa couldn't believe it. So they needed to find George. And then once Kitty Cat had shown up with her beautiful white shoes, and she had saw Peppa and Peppa had said hello, and she said, "Where is George?" "Hello. Can I play in the mountains with you? I'm having lunch, but I need to find my little brother George. And he's by himself on the mountain." "Where?" "On like a muddy puddle on the mountain." "Oh, well, maybe we should get more help." So we were thinking who could help more. Then Susie Sheep had shown up. And Susie said, "Hello, Peppa, can we play on the mountain?" Then Peppa said, "I'm looking for my brother." "See, where is your brother George?" "He's up by himself on a mountain." "Oh no." So they couldn't figure out a way how to do it. And Peppa had an idea. She decided to climb up the mountain, grab George, and then jump off. Wait, did you stop it?
Nope. Trying to make it where you can see better.
And then George was like, up on the roof of the camper van, and he was still crying, and so was Peppa. And they were like, and then they found out a way. They jumped off straight away, and George was finally saved. And their friends had to leave, and then they were eating their lovely lunch, and they love going onto the mountains. And then one mysterious thing had happened. Well, and the mysterious thing is that more muddy puddles are getting up onto the mountain view, and they are definitely going to see how many miles that mountain is high. So they kind of were going to use a calculator, but they actually didn't want to use a calculator. And then Peppa and George were finished right away, and then they climbed up the mountains again, and then Daddy Pig was just getting ready to go back home. But first he had to get the barbecue in and all the seats. So he decided to flip the barbecue over, put it in the trunk, and then decided to put back in the seats for him, Mommy Pig, Peppa, and George. And then when it was finally time to go home, one mysterious thing had happened. Peppa and George were stuck up on the mountain again. And George was so sad. He was afraid that he was going to be up here all by himself. And then he cried and cried and cried. He was like, help me. So, and some of Peppa's friends had heard that weird crying noise, and Pedro and Danny had went up to the mountains to play for a little bit, and Danny had heard that mysterious noise, like, and it was step, and Pedro had think it was George, like, and they decided to listen, and then and it was like, so Pedro decided to look with his eyes and had used his glasses and decided to climb to the top of the mountain and had saw George trying, and it was like, and then Pedro had got up and said, "What's the matter with you, George?" And George was like, I'm stuck up in the mountain and I need rescuing. So, cried even louder, and Granny Pig had went up to see Peppa and George, and she heard that voice, and it was definitely George, so she swung up and got George, and then get him back to shore, of where he is safe, and Peppa had followed down, and they were safe again. Okay, everyone, subscribe here to Alex Toy Channel, and you'll see lots of cool videos, and I hope you really like this video a lot.